right, it's 8:19. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with a reading of our mission statement. Lewis County Economic Development, through its board, the IDA, and its brand, Naturally Lewis, are championing the growth of a community where people want to live, work, build, business, and play. We fostered forward thinking and relationship building, connecting people, businesses, partnerships, and resources to effectively and efficiently grow our county. Everyone have a chance to review the minutes from last month?
So we do have to make a correction. We moved the agenda around, and if Kevin was here, he could explain this a little bit better, I think. But on our Port Leyden Portal LLC resolution from last month, we had the wrong address on that resolution. So Kevin simply changed the address in the resolutions to the correct one and suggested that we just correct the meeting minutes to reflect the right address. So in the meeting minutes section E, it states that the property is at 7320 East Main Street, but the correct address is 3332 Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That was a change. The applicant was originally given the wrong address, and then in the process of purchasing the building, the address was corrected, and it eventually got down to us.
So do we just need to note that in the minutes and,
Yep, we're gonna make that change in the meeting minutes.
okay. Everyone, any other questions? All right, so we have a, reflecting a change of the address. With that, we'll, do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes? Ron, second. Darlene, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries. So now we have to revote. You want to do that now?
We don't need to do anything with the resolutions
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Yep. We can just move on.
All right. Financials.
All right. We didn't have a finance committee meeting this month, but I did send these out with some notes to the finance committee, so I'll just kind of run through them quickly for the full board. You'll see contract revenue, that line is negative. That's where we had to pay Lewis County back for the Cdbg grant that we had to reclaw with Osceola Ski and Sport Resort. They're also paying their portion back. They weren't able to meet their hiring requirements. So that's why you see a negative on that line. Revenues and fees. We've got $100,000 that came in the month of December for the Flat Rock Wind IDA fee versus a budget of $372,000. Part of that $272,000 of that was number 3 wind, which was received in November. So we're still tracking to budget for the year. It's just a timing thing. As you go down, you see another negative under economic development expense. We paid for a lot of the child care program expenses up front, and Jefferson County Economic Development reimbursed us for Jefferson County's portion of that. So that's why you see a negative expense there. It's just coming in on the same line. And then payroll expenses was up this month, or in December, 3 payrolls hit in December. So that'll still track out fine for the year. It looks high this time. Any questions on profit and loss? Let's go to balance sheet. Balance sheet was pretty quiet as well. On the checking and savings line and accounts receivable, you'll see the Flat Rock IDA fee coming in, and then the Jefferson County Economic Development reimbursement was the account receivable there. Down in accounts payable, we had a JCC bill for the daycare program that filtered through, started part of that same daycare program. And then other current liabilities is some payroll taxes hanging out. Otherwise, not a lot of movement there. Questions on that one? All right. Finance committee also saw this report via email. Biggest things being 3 payrolls hitting the same month and where we paid JCC $7,000, 4,000 of which was reimbursed by Jefferson County Economic Development. Any questions on that? To get a motion for approval of the financials, and then I can go over the loan fund status report.
The motion.
I would so move.
Tom, second. Herb, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries. Thank you.
Q4 loan fund status report shows us in pretty good shape. The only thing we have tracking a little bit behind as of 12/31 was skewed, and they were just kind of in that rollover 0 to 30 days. They weren't quite current. They're since a little less current, but that's not abnormal for them. They get a couple months behind and they pay up, and then they get a couple months behind. So this report really is very quiet. We don't have very many loans. We only have 2 loans right now. So we're looking to do a marketing campaign. We've got about 75, 80,000 in the 2 different loan funds. So we've got the ability to do 6 full $25,000 loans or a bunch of smaller ones. And just a reminder to this group, those loans, the biggest hindrances to most people are they have to be gap financing. So they have to be turned down by a bank in order to be eligible, or not fully financed by a bank to be eligible for these funds. And then also there's some employment restrictions, like we want to see jobs created to loan money out of this fund. So those are the 2 biggest hindrances, and hopefully we can get those loans increased, get a few more in there. What we have on that report.
Where are we at with the brewing equipment and the fire?
Talked to him maybe 2 weeks ago and he's still waiting on insurance.
I have seen them there quite a bit.
Yeah.
One of these times I'll swing in and talk to them, but yeah, it's been a huge waiting game for them.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so next items for approval, and the first one is a name change for solar projects. I believe Chris is on the line for this.
Hey, Joe, good morning. So you'll recall that for Flat Rock and Glendale, back in November, the IDA adopted similar resolutions for name changes. So this is the same rigmarole. The company let us know that the name change will be Waters Road North for the Unit A project and Waters Road South for the Unit B project. So this resolution just replicates what we did back in November for these 2 projects. We did speak with company counsel earlier this week, and they're all on board to close all 4 of the projects before the March 1st taxable status date. So we're plodding along. None of these people seem to be in too much of a rush to close these for some reason, but they did tell us they wanted to get it done before March 1st. So we will keep plodding along. And just a reminder that these projects, the IDA already adopted the approving resolution a while back. So this is just a name change, and there's no new public hearing requirement for these since the IDA is not providing additional financial assistance. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? And we need a roll call on this.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, so we need a motion to approve the name change for Solitude Solar. We have Unit B project. which is now Waters Road South.
Second.
Mackenzie motion, Ron second. Roll call vote, Tom,
yes,
Mackenzie,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Herb,
Yes.
Darlene,
Yes.
Joe, yes, Goggin excused. So,
Perfect. So we would just do the same thing for the other project, Mr. Chair.
so this is the Unit A project now will be Waters Road North. Motion to approve. Or motion, Mackenzie, motion by Mackenzie, second.
One second.
Herb. All right, roll call, Tom,
yes,
Mackenzie,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Herb,
Yes.
Darlene,
Yes.
Joe, yes, Goggin excused.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Okay, everyone, take care.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, Tug Hill Artisan Roasters, we discussed this last month. And we're now ready to make an approval, right?
Yeah, and I just wanted to read down through our universal project evaluation policy, evaluation criteria before we make those motions, just to remind everybody of the project and that it does satisfy these criteria. You guys have seen the cost benefit, and that hasn't changed since the first time we reviewed it. There was no public comment at the public hearing and no changes to the project that we needed to incorporate into that calculation. But the New York State required evaluation criteria are the extent to which the project will create or retain permanent jobs. And they are not only retaining the 1 to 2 jobs that they currently have, but they'll be creating 3 more. The estimated value of the tax exemptions, we captured that in our cost benefit. That was about $132,000. The amount of private sector investment is about 45% of the project cost. The likelihood of the project being accomplished in a timely fashion, I rated that as moderate. A lot of that's dependent on grant stuff right now and availability of contractors, so I can't say high because of those factors. Extent of new revenue provided to the local taxing jurisdictions is about $37,000, and that's captured in the cost benefit analysis. And any other miscellaneous public benefits. I noted that they're creating access to office / makerspace in downtown, improving the downtown, especially that particular section of the village of Blauville, and better positioning the village of Blauville for another round of the DRI funding application. Some of the material terms that we noted on our UPEP are private sector investment, which again, a lot of these mirror New York State's requirements, 45% of the project costs. Create or retain jobs, we already noted. Local labor construction, he's really trying to use as much of that as he can. Tri-County area is kind of the widest spread, but the grant stuff kind of does drive a little bit of that, especially with the abatement. Sometimes you have to reach a little farther. Increased property value, it's about $342,000. We're guessing, that's a hard thing to know what they're gonna assess that property as at the end. Increased revenue to local taxing jurisdictions, again, noted above $37,000. Community benefit. Here I noted that it creates foot traffic downtown, improves that deteriorated neighborhood, and puts the property back on the tax roll where it's been held by a tax exempt owner for a long time. The Lcida evaluated criteria is it in a distress census tract by at least one indicator? Yes, it is. Age of the structure, it's quite aged. Elimination of slum and blight, yes. Building or facility vacancy, yes, for many years. Redevelopment supports local community development plan. Yes, it's in line with the town and village comprehensive plan as well as the Natural Lewis strategic plan. Environmental or safety issues, yes, abatements being done. Lead or renewable resources. They haven't specified anything like that in the application, so we're not sure on that one. Building or site has historical designation. It does not, maybe could. Site or structure has delinquent property or other local taxes. No, but it hasn't been on the tax roll. Project / developers return on investment. I think this kind of gets to like an outside developer coming in and developing a building, whereas this is owner developed. Impediments to conventionally finance the project. Some of the things he ran into that I think are already solved are the scale of the project versus Tug Hill Roasters' current assets and versus the current value of the building. But we went through quite the rigmarole to try to solve those things ahead of even getting the application on the table. So I'm happy with how this project evaluates. Any questions on the project? They have started the abatement. It looks like I've seen vehicles there. There's a big sign up front.
I think it's really helpful to have, obviously there's state requirements for the criteria our project should meet, but for the way that you guys have laid this out is definitely beneficial. And certainly if there's any questions down the road, this is a lot more documentation than we've ever had in the past in terms of the process that we went through. All right, so is this a roll call or?
Yes.
All right, so we have two separate documents, correct?
Yes. Seeker
Seeker resolution
Yes,
first.
the seeker was completed by the village of Loudville for this project.
So this is different than the Port Leyden one, and this is more typical of what we usually see in terms of we're simply recognizing that it has been completed by the authorized entity. So with that, do we have a motion to, Darlene makes a motion on the seeker, confirming the seeker determination. Second, Ron, second, okay. Roll call vote, Tom,
yes,
Kenzie, Ron,
Yes.
Herb,
Yes.
Darlene,
Yes.
Joe, yes, Goggin, excuse. This will be the final resolution for the pilot agreement. Do we have a motion to
I'll make a motion.
Herb, second, Mackenzie? Roll call vote, Tom,
I have a question.
Okay.
What portion of is this the total building or just a portion?
So the project as they've scoped it out for this process is, they had quite a bit of roof repair. All of the abatement is included in this phase of the project, and then kind of gutting / redoing most of the inside. It's not, it also, they required a lift inside. They don't really do anything with the actual jail cells yet, but they also take care of some of the exterior issues. That porch, I think, comes off completely.
so essentially weatherizing and
Yeah,
getting the building into shape, and then a good share of the inside for what they'll use for now.
yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, I was getting ahead of myself a little bit. All right, any other questions? just lost Ron for a second. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll move forward with the vote. Tom,
Yes.
Mackenzie,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Herb,
Yes.
Darlene,
Yes.
Joe, yes, Goggin excused. All right, so the next order of business is the update to our universal tax exemption policy, which was, the update was really driven by this, our solar policy.
Yep.
There wasn't much else, I don't think, for, the discussion really was around some changes to the solar policy that we implemented last year after our experiences in this first year with it. So it went out for public comment a few months ago.
Mhm. Yep, so just to recap, this process started last summer. Thanks to Cheyenne and Jenna for moving that along. And the intent was to just update our policy to match what other counties are doing as far as incentivizing solar. So really the big changes are increasing the per megawatt charge from 5,000 to 7,500, providing a better incentive for the projects that are located on land that is not actively farmed. If the project is located on land that is not considered prime or prime if drained, there would be a reduced pilot payment. And then just some clarification in how much the reduction will be if the project is located on marginal lands. So according to our policy, we needed to send out this document for public comment to every affected taxing jurisdiction in Lewis County. And we haven't received any feedback back other than we had a legislator ask about viewshed, if we included anything about viewshed in our policy, which we did. But that was it. So with that, I think we can go ahead and approve these revisions to our policy.
I have a quick question
Yep.
about the special district tax changes and how this is gonna affect not just municipalities, but eventually our,
Yeah.
do we have any updates?
Nope, no updates on that. I have sent out reminders to Hodgson Russ to see if they have any input. With our state membership, the Economic Development Council, they're hosting an IDA Academy soon, and I recommended that they have a session on how IDAs can prepare for this new assessment change. Candy Aiken from Real Properties, I believe, was attending a seminar, she said by end of January or early February. So yeah, we don't have any more updates from your last email to us about.
I think the question comes down to when this is going to be. I mean, it says it's in place now,
Right.
but there's no guidance for
Yeah,
even the property,
No.
which I don't know how it can happen by March.
that's usually how it works. They roll things out and they don't really have guidance for the
I think
departments
it's
that it
important to
affects.
note that if, you know, like we've talked about, is this related to why there's not the movement that
Right.
we're seeing?
Yeah, so yeah, there is a chance that all the work that we've done on this policy goes away.
And just to catch everyone up, so the state had, through an effort led by NYSERDA, worked on a new process for valuation of renewable energy and for taxing jurisdictions. So if a project wasn't to get a pilot agreement, it's guidance to the taxing jurisdiction on how they should assess the projects. And to basically quote a lawyer from a presentation on this, the valuation process is very favorable to developers, and to the point where developers may consider moving away from using pilots and just putting their project on the tax roll if the municipalities are using this formula from NYSERDA. So it could totally change, the whole entire process. And
I could add to that too, there's the factor of, it sounds like these changes are gonna be retroactive, which brings a whole new perspective to towns and municipalities that have separate tax rolls based on the exemptions created.
current pilot payments.
And this seems as though it can go back and change that. It's one thing.
Right,
Forward.
right.
Can it be changed, and is it increased necessarily or decreased?
It's based on so the terminology that they're using is based on assessed value, exempt portion of the tax roll will be calculated on a discounted cash flow model.
So
Don't know
basically,
what that means.
basically the scenario that was shared is that you could basically put the project on the tax roll and have a lower payment than what a lot of the current pilot payments are.
Mhm.
So,
It's one thing to know what's coming,
Right.
but it's another to deal with what had already been decided upon and
Right,
legally accepted. And it sounds like being affected by this.
yeah, so,
You sent us an email linking to a seminar about citing solar projects. Is that topic going to be included in that as well?
well, there's a lot of question marks about how this will affect local municipalities' ability to, to have influence on citing projects. I mean, they'll still have influence through their zoning and planning committees, and the county planning will still have to approve the project. So it's gonna, and especially in Lewis County, we've taken a kind of teamwork approach, trying to work with planning, where we're utilizing our incentive programs to try to facilitate better siting of projects, in addition to the planning department also working with municipalities to try to update their codes for siting and of projects. But this would effectively, if this went through, it would effectively take our ability to help facilitate that out of the picture.
Right.
And really put all the burden on the planning department and the municipalities' zoning laws to help influence the siting of the projects. So
is that seminar going to be more directed towards local municipalities and their zoning and planning regulations?
honestly, there were two there was, I think the new one is on site, more specific to citing the one. And then I also shared a link to a recording from the Tug Hill Commission that was specific to this NYSERDA process. So that was, Tug Hill Commission hosted that before Christmas, and had a lawyer that was actually sat on the committee for NYSERDA that worked on this and present about the update. So that one was specific to this process. I think the one you're referring to that I forwarded recently was about considerations for siting and agricultural land and that sort of thing. So
I forwarded it on to a couple of municipalities that I represent, thinking that might be helpful for them to sign up for.
but there really hasn't been guidance to IDAs at all about how it will affect current pilot agreements. Because if the assessment is less than our pilot agreement, then we have to get out of our pilot with these companies.
I follow with what you were saying, the advantages of pilot is being able to plan on really
Right.
study for them and they can predict.
And budgeting has been done
Right,
based on
right.
previously
Mhm.
negotiated contracts.
If they cut
That
their legs
would-
off underneath you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like a project isn't going to go off pilot for a higher rate. Like they're not gonna opt to get out of the pilot because if the assessed value is higher. So.
Right.
Your pilot, in terms of a municipality, your pilot is going to be the minimum. Right?
Well, I think it's saying this, they're saying that the assessment, this new assessment model might be less
Yeah,
than
I
what
think that's the issue. The pilot is actually could be the max.
Yeah.
Not the minimum.
Yeah, sorry. I understood that one point.
Very
So I think, so
It is.
it's a, you know, I think it's this continued issue between, you know, the state pushing renewable energy, and looking for, you know, mechanisms they have to help push projects forward versus what the local jurisdictions have in terms of tools to both influence the siting of projects and the, you know, the what they get financially for hosting projects. So yeah, unfortunately, it could make a lot of this work you know, basically not applicable anymore. But I think, you know, I still think you know, I would congratulate everyone here on this process because I think we've continued to push the envelope in terms of thinking through how to do this, and it's you know, it's
I think a lot of
been
that
a
work,
really good exercise.
but I think a lot of the work is not for naught because that's gonna be guidance that supports, I would think, how some of these assessed values will
Mhm.
be calculated. I would hope, I mean, I don't know that, but I did want to update that the lawyer that did the Tugwell Commission did offer to meet with from Denmark and their assessor to just have a discussion
Yeah.
about how this impacts. I'm not sure if that, it has not been scheduled yet. It's just-
That's great.
And you know, any of you that the planning department has been working on this in conjunction for us for quite some time and working with townships to adopt new zoning that it more specifically addresses renewable energy. But I would encourage any of you to talk to the township you live in and just see where they're at. You know, I know it's definitely a patchwork around the county of what towns have taken up the issue and what ones haven't, but the planning department has some good guidance on, you know, some model zoning laws that can be put into place by a town. All right, so good discussion, good questions. So we are back to where we were in terms of that, you know, these updates have been made. The public was sent out for comment to the municipalities. And, you know, we approved that a few months ago in terms of the step of sending it out to everyone. So now with no substantial comments or changes requested, as Brittany said, we can go forward with adopting this update to our policy. Any other questions? All right, if there's no other questions, take a motion to, Darlene makes a motion to adopt the updated policy. A second. Herb, do we need roll call?
No.
Okay, just any discussion, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Motion carries, thank you.
Right. 2022-23 budget. We have to approve it this month to submit to the ABO. Cheyenne ran through our budget at our strategic planning meeting last month. Some of you weren't at that, so we're going to go through it again. We'll have Cheyenne go through some of the details of the budget, and then we'll get into some notable changes for this upcoming year. So go ahead, Shay.
Yeah, in terms of revenue, we've had a great agency fee line for a number of years with wind pilots. I should put it up here. And we'll see that continue for the coming year and for a couple more years. We do have, just the way we structured the number 3 wind deal, next year they don't have to pay any of their IDA fee in. So that takes a break before we get $200,000 payments for another 4 years. But we still do have Flat Rock Wind IDA fees coming in, Brook Wind IDA fees, and whatever solar. I've budgeted for $50,000 in solar. As you can see, if we close all of the solar projects we currently have approved, that are just kind of in that rigmarole of waiting, we'll be at $385,000 in solar fees, IDA fees for 2021-22. So this could be a much larger number if we see applications start to come through. My feeling is that they are waiting on this legislation and to see how that all plays out before they submit pilot applications. So we'll see. I budgeted low. And you'll see that across the board. Loans, Arbor is paid off, so I'm touching things, sorry, Jenna.
Okay.
Touching but not touching. Loans, Arbor is paid off, so we're not budgeting anything on that line. Osceola's interest will keep rolling in. Skewed, I budgeted 0 just because we don't know, and I'd rather be conservative. If not, it's only gonna be $300-something because that one's winding down a bit. Snow Ridge loan is paid off, so we won't see any interest on that. Buck Moose mortgage, we should see the final $3,000 payment on that this spring. So the projected for the remainder of this year column. And hopefully we can close that deal with Black River Valley Naturals and get that mortgage taken care of and off of our books. So I'm budgeting 0 for next year. If that rolls into the next year, we could have a little bit there. BRBN installment sale interest is there hand in hand, is we should close on their refinancing to get that mortgage off our books and into a bank. So I'm budgeting 0 there and a little bit lower for the remainder of this year on that one because we won't be collecting interest for the entire year. Skewed building lease and skewed installment sale, I budgeted 0. If things start to progress there, those could be, up to 10,000 and 5,500 on those lines. Norwich installment sale has some interest associated with it as well. And these, I hate including these in the budget because that interest we can't actually use it. It goes back into the revolving loan fund, but we have to for the ADO purposes. So it's about $6,000, usually about $30,000 that we budget for, but can't actually use, which is annoying. Other operating revenue, we'll have $20,000 in administration from the Cdbg round. We've just kicked off. LCDC admin is about $1,600 a year. And then Lewis County economic development money from the county, we're budgeting at $200,000 again. I haven't budgeted for the Lake Champlain, Lake George revolving regional planning board. Thank you. Administrative funds. That was a COVID specific loan fund. They were contracting with us to help market, but it's so restrictive as to who can apply for it that they actually ended up rebranding, and it's still incredibly restrictive as to who can apply for it. So I haven't budgeted any marketing money there. Other non-operating revenue, I can go up. Yeah. We will have the $180,000 coming in for Cdbg. That's just gonna be a pass-through, so you see it come out down below. For the remainder of this year, a couple of things I want to note that we didn't budget for. The Lions Falls Mill bill to RPCI that we paid. That money will come back in hopefully before year end. So that's what that $113,000 is. And then I've got 100,000 and 175,000 roughly for the hand-in-hand mortgage payoff and High Falls building mortgage payoff. So we're budgeting $673,000 in revenue for the coming year. You'll see we're budgeting to way exceed our revenue versus last year's budget as well. And that's kind of been a theme, maybe not so much on the revenue side, but we've netted more overall the past few years. We've been kind of banking some money, and you'll see why a little bit below. Any questions on the revenue line before I? All right, expenditures. The biggest portion of these is always staffing. And you'll see the salaries and wages line jumps a bit. That includes hiring an additional staff member in the coming fiscal year. Other notables, we're budgeting a little bit more in office supplies to cover a new laptop. A couple of ours are getting a little bit aged, and the CRM program, which we'll get into in a minute. Operating expenditures, rent has gone up a little bit. I think we noted that to you guys previously. A lot of status quo. We've moved our drum country. We budget $5,000 for drum country each year, and that we give to them, and we previously included it in the marketing line, and that was back when the county would reimburse us for some of those things. And since our marketing line isn't directly tied to the county anymore, it's more appropriate that we're just putting it in dues and subscriptions. So we've moved that. That's why you see this line jump a bit. But we've also increased advertising and marketing for a couple things that I think Jenna can elaborate on. Do you want to, or?
Notably on here, I think it's just the upcoming forum that we want to host, which is a larger event. It would be a day-long event that we'd hope to bring in 100, maybe more people, with a series of different topics that we can update people on and educate people on. And we're still kind of putting that together, but we're hoping to have that as an annual event. So instead of having our business leaders breakfast quarterly, it'd be 2 times a year, and then the forum would be in the summer months as a big event for us.
And also under that line, we're including our brand audit. So we're getting a couple of quotes from marketing consultants to just take a look at Naturally Lewis. It's been 6 years since we've launched the brand, and just looking at everything we do for marketing. Looking at Naturally Lewis as our brand to promote living, working, and building business in Lewis County, but also Naturally Lewis as the economic development agency and all the services that we offer. So how do we best spend our marketing dollars? What platforms should we be focusing on? So we're getting a couple of quotes from consultants to just do a brand refocus this upcoming year.
Nice. I've got $100,000 budgeted on the properties and redevelopment line, and that's not all very specific yet. Lions Falls Mill site marketing, we're budgeting $20,000. That could end up being zero if the Black River Valley Naturals deal comes through. Commerce Park engineering, we'll talk a little bit more about that at the projects committee. And then not yet finalized some of those projects that kind of pop up that we need to spend a little bit of money on. You'll see that we haven't spent a lot out of that line, and we don't have anything, right directly in front of us that we're going to spend a lot out of that line from last year. And that's been a theme the past couple of years that we'll look at a little bit more in a minute. Strategic goals not included above. We've got some money budgeted for workforce and training programs and DBA Lewis County. We're hoping to bring in other revenue sources to cover some of those, but to be conservative, we're budgeting them coming out of the IDA account. That's about it for operating. You see the RPCI money for the Lions Falls Mill Sand Grant coming back out down here. I've got an email out on the timing of that. Also the CDBG money coming back out and going to businesses down there. And then you will see as the auditor looks at things at the end of the year, we have to consider our sale of the Lionsdale property a loss because of its the value we had on the books for it versus how much we sold it for. So it looks like a loss on our books, but obviously it wasn't. We were given the property for free. So don't be alarmed when you see that. And even with that, we had a budget of $232,000 in access for this fiscal year, and we're looking to come out about $1 million in the black. And that's been a trend for the past couple of years, maybe not quite as much of a jump, but we haven't done a lot of projects. So a lot of the money that we budgeted for projects and for things like that has just been kind of accumulating in the bank. And so when you see this negative $68,000, I'm not alarmed by that by any means. There's no way to show that, yeah, we're just gonna pull a little bit of money out of our savings to cover, property developments or some of these programs that we want to implement. Most notably, since we haven't really talked about it in any depth, I haven't put anything to do with actually buying the land for the Commerce Park or developing it. Again, that would be kind of an off budget scenario because we would plan to use our capital funds for that. So I haven't budgeted for that, but I'm open to comment for if we want to budget for that. Any thoughts or comments on the budget?
And we've been recently corresponding with Mr. Hebrand or Herbrand from the railroad. You show a line in there for the railroad income or anything like that. It's only, what was it?
I should put a line on there, but it's going to be a zero line.
It's not. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of moving, but I just noticed it in there.
Yeah, we did get a check and I haven't read his response to my kind of snippy reply. They're required to send us their itemized revenue and itemized expenses for the railroad each year. And then there's a calculation as to the lease payments they've owed us. We hadn't collected on that and they're supposed to send it without prompting. But we also hadn't prompted them for probably 7 years, but we could only really reach back 5 years. They sent us the calculation and only are saying they had revenue in excess of expenses for 1 year. And with the calculation that brought it down to $5,000 or something. The check was for 5,000 or 500. It was nothing for 5 years worth of using that railroad to store tanks on. But yeah, I mean, it's on my schedule now. We will be pushing them to give us those reports and any money associated with them for the lease on the railroad in the coming years. But I would budget it at zero. Thank you.
Is it going to come back to life? Or do you think the railroad usage is going to increase? Or just going to sit there dormant like it?
I don't think so. I think more than anything, we needed to circle back around and
Get their attention.
yes, get their attention, but also the county. Some of the elected officials have really been pushing for, they must be making money for storing those tanks all along that Boonville Lions Falls corridor every winter or every summer. I do have to. I do have to put 3-year projections in Paris for the ABO reporting as well. So that's just current year and then coming years is as close as I can guess. So you guys have that to look at as well, if you want to look at it in any kind of detail. Again, I'm very conservative, but I do show profit for 2 years, and then once the IDA fees start dropping off, it gets a little dicier in terms of if you're super conservative, it's going to be a negative. And that's just the staffing page that feeds into the other ones. Any questions? Your thoughts? Need any changes?
I didn't know what Paris meant on the top.
Oh, Paris is the public authorities
Reporting something or other.
information system, something like that. It's the ABO and the office of the state comptroller. That's where you have to input all of everything about you.
I was hoping it was a trip, so.
But not a good one.
It's always been the joke. It's not a good trip to Paris.
I wouldn't suggest going on vacation the week before it's due, like last year with Brittany out on maternity leave. That was not a good decision making.
Just a few things that I want to point out. As Cheyenne noted, our operating expenditures, the projected results are much less than what we've budgeted for, and that's been a trend over the past couple of years, which is going to lead us into our conversation at our projects committee meeting about how we need to do a big project. I think the county and Ryan Boucher, really wants us to see a larger project happen as well, and I think it's time as well. The newer funding opportunities, again, each year we kind of dabble, we place our funding where our strategic plan lies. So continuing to fund programming, workforce development and training initiatives, and of course the increased marketing to include the brand audit and events. And then going down to staffing, I wanted to get your input on our intern line item. We've increased that from 5,000 to 10,000 because this summer we want to hire 2 interns. We want to stick with a marketing intern, but we also want to hire a finance intern to help Cheyenne out as well. We see such value in having interns. Like having Kaylee work with us has been a godsend, really. She's great, and it's awesome to just have someone else, even part-time, to just help us with some of the smaller, even administrative tasks. So does anyone have anything against us raising that line item?
Do you partner with or any of the agencies, most county?
So in the past, we've used the Careers Here program. We tried to last year, but we're still very confused on the process. That program is supposed to be a student-driven program. So students go to the workplace and say, I would like an internship in engineering. And they match them with a company or a business. We came to them with an intern, like, hey, we have Haley as an intern. Can we be funded? And we weren't able to be funded that way because there wasn't enough spots left. I did mention to Joe that I might try to go back to them this year and say, hey, we are funding an intern ourselves. Would you be willing to, kind of like a buy one, get one scenario where we're funding one, will you guys fund one? Might just try it again. But either way, if it doesn't work, we do want to have that budget in place so that we can hire 2 interns. And we really see the value, like we joke around with Kaylee a lot. Like she just learned so much about Lewis County, about herself, about being an adult, like budgeting and, learning her social security number, just like we're teaching them things and we're also teaching them about the opportunities in Lewis County. And I think it's really opened her eyes to what is available in Lewis County. So we want to continue to do that, cultivate that culture. Any objections to that? And,
One
yep,
thing about intern, our office is looking at internship as well. So if you want to share an intern or something like that, we would be open to it.
okay,
We don't have enough business to keep the person busy 7 days or 5 days a week or something like that. But if you wanted to share somebody, we would be interested in doing something.
okay.
So,
Have you used the Careers Here program?
which-
Careers Here?
No,
Okay, I'll share that information with you.
okay.
The Pratt Northam will fund your intern,
Oh,
essentially.
okay. We worked with JCC a couple of years ago, and that's some paralegal students. We haven't done anything in a few years since then. Actually, my nephew, Ian Collins, was an intern for 1 year.
Yeah,
And that worked out really well. We like this way to do what we do.
yeah, absolutely.
That's nepotism. I run out of nephews, so.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I apologize for having to step out for a second, but I just couldn't help but to come back to the whole project thing, because that has been an emphasis, and, for various reasons, there hasn't been a big project in a couple of years. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I just think as we get this pressure from the county and stuff, that we have to do the right project,
Right.
not a project. And there are a couple potential exciting things coming down the pipe, and, we have the money and reserves to be able to help facilitate those, but
Yeah.
but I think we have to push back a little bit on that of, we're being strategic about what we're looking at doing. And,
Right.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit yesterday even. When we think about some of these projects and that we've done, like the Harrisville transfer site and the Lionsdale site, and Climax, and what kind of little involvement we've had in the Lions Falls Mills, those have never been money makers for us. Those have been economic development projects. So seeing what we see with the wind pilot money kind of phasing out and not knowing what the solar is going to do, or if we're gonna land that last wind project that we think there's space for. Our next project, our next big project, or our next big expenditure of our capital needs to be something that creates revenue. down the road. Our next big project or our next big capital expenditure should probably be something that creates revenue, a revenue stream along this time.
And Cheyenne and I were doing some projections for future organizational structure that we'll get into. But over the next 10 years, if we do nothing more than what we're doing now, we're okay for 4 years. But after that, we won't be able to sustain our organization if we do nothing else. So it goes back to, we need to, whether if it's owning a building and leasing, getting more lease revenue coming in, Commerce Park, we really need to think about 10 years from now, how are we going to sustain our organization?
And, this has been a growth process. I mean, this was an organization with a half-time director and a half-time administrative assistant that primarily, operated off of the small amount of pilot funds that were there at the time. And we've leveraged these renewable energy projects. We've changed our relationship with the county to be the broader economic development arm for the county. And that's allowed us to grow and, really have an impactful presence here. But we've always known that, some of these things weren't forever, right? And even with the pilot administrative fees, we get those largely up front, or at least within the first few years of the project. But they need to, they're essentially there to administer the pilot for the 20 or 25 years that the agreement's in place, right? So, so it's it's an opportunity to have money to invest in economic development. And obviously, we're not a for-profit business, but at the same time, we're, you know, if we're gonna, like you guys said, if we're gonna invest in projects that aren't returning anything, that's positive for the county. That's part of what we're here for. But we also need to consider, you know, our operating cost and the stuff we're doing on, you know, for this area. The marketing, the facilitation of projects, you know, subsidizing certain, you know, like the daycare boot camp and stuff like that. So, you know, where does the revenue come long term to continue to have the flexibility to do those cool projects?
Yeah. Any other questions on the budget?
So we would be looking, I mean, we can have more discussion if there's any more questions, but we would be looking to approve the proposed budget today so that it can be submitted to the state in the proper time frame. Are there any other questions? Okay. We have a motion to approve the budget as shown. Ron, second. Mackenzie. All in favor? Aye.
Right.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. So we wanted to bring this in front of the board today. For the past 2 years, I've been looking for some sort of program to help us organize everything that we do at the IDA. And so I found this one program through Cloud9. It's an economic development organization accelerator, CRM tool, customer relationship management tool. And really, this was the one program that provided everything that we needed to do. So it's an online program that links directly to our Microsoft email accounts. And it's going to allow us to keep track of all of the entrepreneurs and businesses that are coming in through DBA Lewis County, all of our projects that we're currently engaged in, all of our pilots and the internal process that we have. We will be able to track all of that on this program. Right now, we're using Excel. We have our binders, you know, paper binders that we, you know, try to dig through, our server files through the county. And it's getting to be a lot. And I think as we look to do more, we have how many people in DBA right now? 40 businesses and entrepreneurs in DBA Lewis County. We just need a program to organize ourselves. So even though we have it budgeted for next year, since this is going to be a spend for this fiscal year, we do need approval through the board, and it's going to be an over a $5,000 spend. So for them to build out this program for us, it's going to be $3,372, and then the annual fee for 3 licenses is going to be $3,420. Does anyone have, I did share this with the finance committee, so I don't know if Mackenzie, you gave some input via email. I know that BCA uses softwares and it's helpful for you guys. Yeah.
To do our jobs, so
Right.
I think it's definitely something that would make our lives easier and more efficient, so like. Is it a cloud-based solution?
Yes.
And I've been part of selecting, I've been part of having to ramp up to make the transition.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about a lot of times you have to pay extra for training.
Yes, that is included 15 hours of just support time.
And is that, like, is there a lot of built-in support and resources? Have you been able to look at that at all?
Yes.
Some of that self-paced is gonna serve you better than, I mean, I don't know if that's it's probably not one-on-one help. Or is it like a training webinar that you can just review?
They do have webinars and trainings that they will provide us. Jen and I have sat in on a number of meetings with them. And I almost think it is one-on-one, like they will sit down with us and work with us in teaching us how to use it. But really the program, the trial that they gave us, it was very intense, like for large economic development organizations who are working on 20 projects at a time and, getting in business leads from all over the world. We were like, we don't need all that. We simply just need, like, how do we organize our contacts and our entrepreneurs and our small businesses? How do we organize communication between our businesses? So if we go out and visit a manufacturer, we can take notes right then and there. It tracks our emails. If any one of us left or was gone tomorrow, we would be able to pick back up on where that person left off on a project or communicating with a business.
Does it support migration from your spreadsheets, your current spreadsheets, or do you have to?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's full. Well, yeah, with anything, there's gonna be. But
Yeah, and with the intake survey that we use Microsoft Forms for, it's going to automatically input all that information into the contact in this program.
In my experience, that's a pretty economical price for a software program. One of my other organizations I work with, we just spent $75,000 on a software program. So this seems like it might do quite a bit for not too much money.
yeah, the do-it-yourself scares me, just in a marketing standpoint,
The way that it's set up, it has everything laid out already.
so that you can pull yourself in without.
Right. And we can kind of turn off some things that we might not use. So the do-it-yourself portion is like, we can figure out some of it, but we also have the support from them to personalize it a little bit where we need it.
If you were to add another employee, what would that be the cost? How much would it increase?
And that's something that I thought about.
And do the interns need access to it?
No.
It's $65, it looks like, for 3 employees
Per
per
person.
person.
Yep. So,
And then again, so $95
yep.
a month.
Yeah, and as we think about our future organizational structure and who really, depending on what everyone's roles are, will depend on who needs access to this. It might not make sense for an office administrator to have access to it. But for now, we just need the 3 licenses. Interns will not have their own access to it.
Any other questions? So again, this would be to move forward with this in this year. It was included, the annual fee was included in next year's budget, but the initial expense to get it set up to come out of this year's would be a change to our current budget, would need approval. So do we have a motion to Mackenzie, second, third? Wait a second.
Does anyone use Microsoft Teams? You guys use that at work? We use that all the time. I think we'd be lost without Teams.
I don't use near as many features as what they should, but
I know more from the project management and there's different types of CRMs, obviously. Is
Yeah.
that what they specialize in, or do they?
It's they're a Microsoft partner, so they basically sell Microsoft Dynamics, which is the app,
Engine.
the application. But they can also go in and customize it.
Do we know if other agencies nearby will be using it?
Not anyone near here, I don't think.
They have talked about that at conferences before, what other people have used, right? And a lot of them are very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just seems
like Salesforce was another one that I looked into, but they were thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the CRM models that we did find were very much retail focused, and it just didn't work for what we needed it for. Sorry, go ahead.
All right, so we did have a motion and a second to approve the expenditure in this budget year for the initial setup of the software. All in favor?
Right.
I
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. All right. Some updates from January. We had a great month of a lot of offsite meetings. We've started to slowly meet with some of our manufacturers. We went up and visited with Viking Surveys and had a great meeting with them. Met with Omni Advanced Materials to discuss their large expansion project that they are embarking on this year. We've been a part of the Beaver River strategic planning process that they are currently going through. They're looking to implement a lot of career exploration, workforce development, and community engagement with their students, which is a great thing for us to be involved in. And we also co-hosted the Lewis County Snowmobile Action Committee as a result of the snowmobile survey and developed a lot of great action items to come from that meeting. We had snowmobile clubs, county people, business owners attending that meeting. And it was a great step forward in implementing some of the opportunities that came from that survey. We also launched our Cdbg Micro Enterprise Grant Program. I don't know if you've seen the press release that was on Monday. We launched it. We rebranded it as Launch Lewis County. So if you all know of businesses that have a focus in tourism, outdoor recreation, food and beverage, value-added processing, or downtown businesses, send them our way. We could potentially fund them with a grant. And lastly, we just continue to work with the co-op and Casanova equipment on moving that Commerce Park project forward. We attended the co-op meeting this past month to talk with their board. We've met with the village of Lowville, the town of Lowville, the town zoning officer, really doing a lot of relationship building up front to get everyone in the know of this project so that when it comes to approval time, we don't hit stumbling blocks like we did last time. Any questions? That's all I got.
All right, so we kind of already touched on this a little bit. But
Hand in hand.
Hand-in-hand mortgage, they are approved through their lender and they're planning on moving forward with giving us a check to get out of their mortgage. So Kevin's already drafted a mortgage release and they'll transfer to their lender. And that'll be off our books before we have to have another audit, so that'll be great. Hopefully we can get the other one off and it'll be smooth sailing. We'll know to not even attempt to go anywhere near a situation like that again, even if it seems okay.
Which brings us to our next point of the 501c3.
Right.
Any questions on the hand in hand? So just wanted to bring the board up to speed. I've mentioned this before. We're working on a future organizational structure for economic development. Right now, we're just in the feasibility, like just researching phase. It would entail creating a separate economic development 501c3 as an umbrella organization called the Naturally Lewis Business Alliance or Prosperity Partnership, whatever we want to call it. That would then contract with the IDA and LCDC for staff services. So under this 501c3, it would house all of the employees, and all of the economic development projects and funds will be held at the 501c3. And we would then let the IDA and the LCDC simply do what they were created to do, which is incentives, bonds, installment sales, and that's about it. And the reason why we are looking into this is because obviously with us being an IDA, our funds are very restrictive in what we can do. Being a 501c3 gives us so much flexibility in what we can do with our funds. The county is very interested in putting all economic development funding into one bucket. And I have had a meeting with Joe as the chair of the IDA, Tim Peterson as the chair of the LCDC, and Ryan Pichet, just to get them up to speed and to get their input. Met with Kevin to discuss any legal concerns, and Cheyenne and I are working through the finances at this point to make sure that financially something like this would work. I did a lot of research in what other counties are doing and how they're set up. It's different all across the board, but this model is modeled after Mohawk Valley Edge in Oneida County. Mohawk Valley Edge is the economic development 501c3, and they have multiple staff service agreements with like Oneida County IDA, Oneida County LDC, their Griffiths Park LDC, there's like a Rome LDC. So they have a staff of 15 that just manages all of these entities beneath that umbrella. So that's what we're working on. The plan is to present a solid structure, a solid plan to both boards in March or April, the next time we bring the two boards together. But in the meantime, I would love to, sit down with you individually and have a conversation if you want to learn more. Even talk to Herb about, apparently there's the Diana Development Corporation, which is a stagnant corporation that used to do a lot for the town of Diana, owns some properties, has some assets. So is that something that we could also manage as paid staff as well, if there are funds available? Joe, is there anything you want to add?
Well, I think, this goes back to our strategic planning session with the LCDC a few months ago, and there's essentially kind of three formats to pursue. One is the status quo. One is this format, as Brittany said, is modeled after Mohawk Valley Edge and gives creates another entity, but gives flexibility. And then the third option is kind of what was talked around a little bit at the strategic planning session in terms of just more shared collaboration between the two existing entities in terms of the IDA and the LCDC. But so there are other options, but this one certainly, seems like it provides the most, advantages for the broader economic development. And some of the details that we probably don't need to get into today, but just to have you guys thinking about, because it impacts you as board members, is how we, what the future looks like in terms of how the boards interact with each other and what the governing body is of this 501c3. Because at that point, it will, the task of the IDA will be almost somewhat more limited than it is today in terms of the really focusing on the authorities that we have specifically as an IDA. So, I think that's one thing I'd throw out is just to be thinking about and giving Brittany and Cheyenne input on is everyone's involvement and how we see that to still have a good boards on all these different levels and everyone's input in the process. So.
Yeah, and going back, Joe, you may be the only one that was on this board. Ron, you were coming on soon after I got hired, but we were in like kind of a lot of transition board-wide, or the board had a lot of uneasiness about Eric's transition out of the office and what that would mean because of the dynamics between economic development as a county office and the IDA. And so many things had been taken on by the IDA because this board was the only one that were interested in doing it. And so this model kind of sucks a lot of those things back out of the IDA where they're micromanaged by the state and back into an entity that is almost like a new economic development office. And just leaves the things that IDAs are supposed to do and that the state has always kind of pushed back on. IDAs are supposed to do what IDAs are supposed to do. So it helps us with that. But as I was talking through the budget too, I wanted to thank this board and congratulate this board really for how smooth that transition was. Like looking in hindsight of how uneasy everyone was about the change from having a director that was somewhat county funded to having a director and a complete staff that's funded just by the IDA with some county money. But there was a lot of concern that if we were a county line item, that the county could just pull it away at any time. And I think the relationships and the dynamic with the county and the work the IDA is doing has improved and changed so much that I don't think anybody feels really uneasy about that. And I just wanted to take a minute to recognize that, because I think I've lost sight of that a little bit in the day-to-day is how well this board has made that change.
Thank you for that update. And so
Sorry,
yeah.
Such a medical diamond comment, I'm sorry, but you were talking about potential names of this not-for-profit. I think you might have used the word partnership. In that. That's a word you can't use.
Oh,
Because when you're forming a not-for-profit corporation, you can't call it a partnership.
Oh, good to know.
It's not a partnership.
gotcha.
So that'll just be, when you come up with a name, let me know, I'll identify the.
What about
the statute.
alliance?
Pardon?
What about alliance?
Alliance, I'm 99% sure is okay, but I'll
Okay.
check to be sure. There's a list of words you can't use, and partnership is one of them.
Okay.
Unless you're a partnership. Then
And so going back to hand in hand, under 501c3, we can have a mortgage.
yeah.
No, I think that, there's been a lot of homework done on. There's still more work that needs to be done, but that this provides a lot of avenues. And to get back to Cheyenne's point, I mean, we all are interested in broader economic development in this group. But at the end of the day, our first responsibility at these meetings and every month is the business of the IDA. And we had that conversation when Brittany was hired of first and foremost as the director of the IDA, and we're trying to do these other things at the same time, right? So, so this really could be an exciting, exciting shift and really open up some doors. So just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with it and, is still able to contribute the way they want to.
Yeah. More information to come on that. And lastly, just going back to the intern conversation, we want to hire marketing and a finance intern for the summer. And doing so, we have to start that process soon. So I don't know if we need to approve hiring it, if we've already approved it in our budget, but just want to let you all know that we will be starting that search process. And also talking with Kaylee about, her intent for this summer. She could very well also, continue to be our marketing intern. But Cheyenne is working on a finance intern job description. So we will be searching for that staff member as well. And we'll still model it after how careers here is set up maximum of 350 hours throughout the summer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Careers here will have somebody for us.
Right. Yep. We'll let them know.
We can try again.
Yep.
I think, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, so we did include, that was included in the budget proposal for the funding for the intern. So I'd say with the approval of that, we can, move forward with job descriptions and whatnot. So.
Okay.
Anything else? Well, thank you all very much. We'll need a motion to adjourn. Ron, second. Darlene, all in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Just a reminder, we're hosting our first Business Leaders Breakfast in 2 years next Friday. So please attend if you can. We're going to combine our governance committee meeting with our projects committee meeting on February 15th. For governance, we just need to review policies for an annual. Can't do it. That's okay. But for projects committee, we will be discussing Commerce Park, and we want as many people there as possible. Then our next